undaunted, I carry on with my projects. But in these projects, I've tried to figure out how to take this analog workmanship and this analog creative process and make that and couple it with the internet. And so I did all these internet businesses in the 90s, and I started with Notepad and Angly Bracket, HTML close Angly Bracket, and all this kind of stuff, but it's still a drag because you have all these websites. And my first web page I made was about the history of hemp in Japan, and I learned how to make a web page, but I didn't know how to make web pages where they connected them together. So like my first web page, it was like a Zen cone. How long can a web page be, you know? Until you hit save, until you, no, it could be as long as you want. You could be continually making a page. Turns out that's not the best way to make a page. But then lo and behold, the final little piece of the puzzle, the findability, came about with RSS. So I met Dave Weiner at Nomex a couple years ago. And Dave Weiner, he's like curmudgeonly old professor, you know, computer geek that invented RSS. I'm like, wow, hey, Dave Weiner, nice to meet you. My name's Dave. Thanks for inventing RSS. You know, most guys named Dave are pretty friendly, so that's a little wow. Yeah, it's true, isn't it? Most guys named Dave. You know many assholes named Dave? And I said, Dave, can I take your picture? Put it on the Flickr. I wish digital cameras had never been invented. Oh, what a sweetheart. Well, thanks anyway for making the fucking RSS, dude. And a lot of people have different objectives and different reasons why they even care that this stuff exists. Some people see it purely for financial purposes and a means to an end to make some money. Some people see it as a better way to promote and market, and I know that. I do a marketing gig as a day job. You know, I make a paycheck. Come see this awesome, compelling content, right? I know how it works. But there's really something to be said for looking beyond this immediate short-term future, and even beyond looking in terms of it as a blog, and saying that all these puzzles of the publishing tension, the conundrums have been solved. We now have a distribution tool that can indeed publish for free or cheap anywhere, anyhow, and the steps now to take that and use that as a collaborative tool to build something that can then come full circle and turn into an analog artifact that people can enjoy sitting by the fire, but you're building something online, and then the content and the delivery method have really been completely separated where they can be any way that you want. The trick is thinking of something that you have the ability to share that not everyone else does. Now, some people say that not everyone has an artistic spark, not everyone's Van Gogh, no one thought Van Gogh was either, right? You know, not everyone's Henry David Thoreau. No one thought Henry David Thoreau was anything when Henry David Thoreau was writing. He died penniless at 37, then, 100 years later, changed the world. Civil disobedience, nonviolence. So I think there's something to be said for looking beyond the immediate benefit and really look and say, we have this opportunity with these tools. We have the ability to communicate at a high level. There's kind of rules and structure around editing and writing of what makes things good that you can learn about. So it's up to you. Is that bottom one? If you can't read it, it says something to express. Then I'm going to go to the next one. That's my chart. I think it's called a Venn diagram, but I don't know much about those. It used to be the end goal of making something was to find a publisher, find a record deal, get that contract. Big executive comes and tells you your work is worthy. I'm going to sign you to a contract. We don't need them anymore. The gatekeepers have fallen. We can create and interact, or are falling anyway. We can create and interact with our own community, and we can build a culture around our way of thinking. Whatever you're into, you can build things around that, and you can interact. And then you can end up right here in this awesome middle space. Is this a Venn diagram? Anyone know about chart?
Almost. We have another, usually there's 3 circles.
Hold on, we can add one. I got a Sharpie.
Sure, you can Venn diagram too. No, because it's inside the box, right? So. Yeah.
She's wrong. Right. She's wrong anyway. It is a Venn diagram.
Okay. Well, I always kept, ever since Rockstar Boot Camp, they told me to keep a Sharpie with me all the time, just in case I have to modify my Venn diagrams. This particular Venn diagram There's circle 1 that says awesomeness. Actually awesome because I ran out of space. I should have drawn the circle bigger. I also, for those of you who are really into, like charts always seem to have some like little variable symbols, so I put an X on it. Doesn't actually mean anything. Actually, the X stands for color 1. This circle should be a different color than this circle, which is color Y. And it represents audience, right? So you can be making awesome stuff and not have an audience, and you can have an audience and not be making awesome stuff. Your goal is to end up here in the middle, designated here with the kind of modified diagonal hash marks. In this area of the hash marks is where you want to hang. This is the area where your awesomeness and your audience comes together, and you have breathed life into a project because you have put your soul into something. You put the log back into the blog. The blog is to talk about this awesomeness that you're doing here. Perhaps you're making a series of discourse about some topic that's incredibly compelling to you. Perhaps you're engaging, like many of you do, with various charitable organizations, and not just helping for a one time, but helping change the culture and helping educate other people about how to do the same thing. When you can think of projects in a longer term that might stretch over 5 years and separate them from the delivery method, you can really let yourself engage in some bigger things. Now, before I totally start segueing into party time, because anyone who knows me knows I don't want to interrupt any beer drinking time, I'm going to show you just 2 more last things that kind of show me trying to close the loop on some of these big projects. I've kind of talked about these large story arcs. So I have all this poetry that I've been collecting. Anyone else like write little poetry and have notebooks in your drawer, and you're like, oh, one of these days I'm totally going to do something with these? No. Okay, so here's what I did. I started taking all the notebooks, and whenever I wasn't feeling particularly inspired to write, per se, I would put a little LP on the record player, smoke a little reefer, crack open a few beers, and I'd start transcribing. And in doing the transcribing from original journals, I shut down my self-editing voice. This is an imperative step, because as soon as you start reading your stuff, that was awesome when you wrote it, you'll go, oh my God, douchebaggery, who said this? and I know this because I totally do it, right? I mean, I record my little podcast. If I listen back to them, I'm like, whoa, self-important douchebag. Who is it? So put on your editing toque. I'm wearing my editing toque here. And transcribe this. My easiest way to do it was just to plop it into a WordPress.com blog, because I'm not very codey or crafty on that kind of stuff. So I have a writer's notebook blog. It's public and people can see it, although I don't think people really do. Well, I'm gonna do. But I look at it more as a workbook, and where I can start to transcribe and assemble all these things. Then this summer, what I went through, I started breaking them up. How can I turn these into collections, right? How can I put some sort of thematic thread? Should I arrange them chronologically? Should I arrange them by theme? What should I do? So one day I got this printer that I was a tester of, right? I was print tester log program or something. I wrote a review about it or something. But it was really handy because I printed out the whole blog. Isn't that funny? One of those people that printed a blog. I went down to Ambleside Beach, and I started dividing out all the poetry into 4 piles. And I started to notice some common threads. And I go, all right, I got something coming together here. And they span years and locations, but there's sort of some common themes throughout them. So I started to assemble them, and I said, oh great, now I got 4 piles of shit that I'm not going to do anything with. So then I futzed around and thought about it for a little bit, and I said, you know what, I should just make it into a little something that people can, because I didn't want to print out a bunch of things and sew them together, because I got other shit to do on my weekends, right? So I said, I'll make your own book. I would take the poetry from the blog, put it in a document, make it into a PDF, and then publish it as a PDF, and then let people print it out and chop it up into whatever they want. So I have one draft copy of it. Now, the one mistake I made is I didn't put the little crop marks on it, but that's cool because it can be more like that Don Quixote. All the pages are all kind of messed up in different sizes, look more artsy craftsy, and you get to do it on whatever paper you want because it's your dime, it's your printer. So in closing, I would like to offer you, manner of breathing life into my own projects and encouraging a culture around this stuff that I hope will last